Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni maliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading and to give parents the tools they need to let their kids know that everyone in their lives deserves to be loved, respected, and included. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Tammy Kirkness. She's joining us from Sydney, Australia to celebrate Why Do I Feel So Worried? Before we invite Tammy into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Snoodles, Cadoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles. The hilarious new picture book from our friend Stephen Joseph. Out of a world where crankiness reigns and cars run on sauerkraut comes a new invention, the Snoodlemobile, the brainchild of Herbie Snoodleman. Now cars are powered by noodles, and the delicious aroma produced fills everyone with happiness. Only one person does not appreciate the success of Mr. Snoodleman's invention, Sour Crudelman, the brains behind the once popular Krautmobile. But when Crudelman decides to seek revenge on his business rival, the unexpected happens. After all, when cars run on noodles, anything is possible. The newest children's tale by author Stephen Joseph invites readers of all ages to enter a world where imagination is king and even the crankiest person can find happiness. Get your copy today. Snoodles, Cadoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles by our friend Stephen Joseph. Join us right now from Sydney and the beautiful nation of Australia. The beautiful and a little soggy nation of Australia. Our guest is here today to celebrate Why Do I Feel So Worried? Follow the arrows from anxiety to calm, a guide for kids and parents. Please welcome to the show, Tammy Kirkness. Hey, Tammy, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you on. Tammy and I were just talking. A lot of Australia has suffered some major flooding, and we're happy that Tammy is okay and that the people in my family that are down there are okay. And we pray for everybody in that's being affected. I'm imagining a lot of those folks are and have been feeling a lot of anxiety.
Oh, I tell you what, a global pandemic, a war in Russia and Ukraine, flooding, and a few years ago we had some really extensive bushfires here. It's a tough going time for a lot of people.
It really is, and we've talked here on the podcast about there are a lot of parents out there who don't want their kids to skin their knee or experience any kind of sadness or loss, and that's really unrealistic and probably not healthy, and it's especially unrealistic now. Our kids, even if we're trying to protect our kids, and we're not talking about the pandemic or the invasion or the floods or the fires, if we're not talking about it at our homes, you can bet that your kids are hearing about it at school.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, information has a way of wiggling itself into kids' ears. And if we as the parents or caregivers or teachers or librarians are not having that conversation and talking about the tricky parts and the parts that make us feel wobbly, uncomfortable, worried or anxious, kids' minds will create their own story around what's going on, and it can really rock them from the inside out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. Anybody, I'm a parent. My kids are 26 and 29, and we had a really great relationship. But we usually would wait until the kids like brought us up, especially about questions about sexuality and whatnot. There were some issues that they had questions about, and they didn't bring them to us right away. And when they did, they had already kind of worked out answers to that. And when they shared those answers with us, it was like, I kind of can imagine how you got there, but you're not even close. So let's sit down and talk about it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Getting on the front foot with these things is so important. And, you know, having those age-appropriate conversations is really vital. And it can be as simple as, hey, have you heard anything at school about a country called Ukraine? Mm-hmm. And that's your in. And they might say, no. Mm-hmm. Or they might say, yeah, our teacher was talking about it. And then that can be your space to leapfrog off there and say, well, what do you know? You know, is there anything that's worried you about it? Let me tell you a little bit about what I know, and go from there.
Yeah. I like that. I like that, bringing up in a non-threatening, not a sit down, I have to tell you about this. You know, just kind of, hey, have you heard anything about this? And what have you heard? And try to gauge that before you just dump all this information, maybe dump your own anxiety onto the kids. Kind of get a sense of where they're at.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I think it's worth pointing out that if you do that, or you have done that, that's okay, because you're also a human being. And parents, we are so fallible. And, you know, there are times where our own worries or our own emotional sensitivities that have been coming up through the day burst out. And all of a sudden we've gone, oh, that's not really what I meant to say. And that's okay too. When we acknowledge that may have happened, then we can have that conversation as well. So I think the main thing to really consider here is being, as Brene Brown says, being in the arena, having the tricky conversations and showing your kids that actually it's okay to talk about things that make us feel uncomfortable. And it's also okay to stuff up the conversation and mess it up somehow and talk around that as well.
I like that. One of the pieces of advice I give to young parents anytime I'm asked is to climb down off that pedestal that your kids put you on, and, you know, that they're looking up at you thinking that you're perfect and wonderful and have all the answers, and you really want to get off that pedestal as soon as possible.
Oh, it's tempting to stay up there though, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. And showing our vulnerabilities and showing that we make mistakes creates such a safer space for kids to also get comfortable with failure and doing things wrong and saying things even when they need to be said, but you don't quite have the right phrasing for it.
Mm-hmm. Tammy, what's your background? We didn't invite you on the show just because you wanted to talk about this. This is your field.
Yeah, so I started off my world in psychology, and I used that as a platform to actually go into all things corporate as it so would happen. And I did everything in the people space there, and I found myself burning out and realized that I had this underlying wash of anxiety that had been sitting within my world for truly as long as I can remember. And when I started to realize that and approach it and figure out ways to better manage it, my life started to get a lot more graceful. And that was such a breath of fresh air for somebody who is used to shallow breathing. Along the way, I also trained as a yoga teacher in India in a monastery under monks over there. I worked as a clinician over in the UK, so working with kids and a few adults as well, but predominantly kids who have all manner of learning difficulties. So everything through from dyslexia to autism. And with that, having a worried little mind goes very much hand in hand with a lot of those learning difficulties. And then underneath all of that, I was a bit of a worried kid myself and had some very big emotions. I was a perfectionist. I procrastinated. I overthought everything, and I had this very big mind that wanted to understand everything. And on one hand, it was amazing, and it continues to be a big gift. But on the other hand, it was something that I didn't quite understand and wished that I had some more tools and techniques to help me feel a little bit more grounded and a little bit more at peace and calm within myself. And so this background, a rather smushy background of all these different things, came together to prompt me to write initially an adult's book around helping myself with anxiety that went on to do quite well. And so I was so thrilled to be able to create this book for kids, so age 7 to 12-ish, to help them when I wish I had have had some of those techniques myself.
Yeah. You mentioned that you look at part of your personality that has caused you issues as a gift.
Yeah.
And I think we've had a lot of guests on who surprise us in referring to their dyslexia. And I think my dyslexia is a gift. I think my neurodiversity is a gift. And I think that that's a really healthy way to look at it, because all of our uniqueness can be looked at as a gift or as a problem. And I think if we train ourselves and help our kids to understand that their unique abilities, it does set them apart. It does make their life challenging sometimes, but ultimately it's a gift and it's a superpower if you learn how to use it as such.
Oh, absolutely. You know, coming from having taught a lot of kids in the neurodivergent space, and then also my own experience of being an anxious kid with big emotions, I really look at these differences in how people's minds and brains work as this ability for them to see the world in a different way, from a different perspective. And if we didn't have that in the world, there would be such beigeness and everything would be so neutral, and there'd be no sparkle and no innovation or creativity. And we need that in our world to continue to lift up ourselves, our communities, our schools. And so we need these people that have different ways of seeing the world, and their hearts are different as well, and understanding that they have this additional ability to see things in such a way that it adds an additional element of how beautiful the world can be, and how we can solve problems, and how we can interact with each other and respect each other in such a beautiful, interesting way. So I do see it as a gift, and I would love and wish for other people who have a worried mind or an anxious mind or an overthinking way of approaching the world to see that as a gift, and to be able to neutralize out the parts that bring them some kind of struggle or pain at the same time.
Yeah. So what are some of these techniques that we can help our kids learn that can kind of smooth out and help them start using those anxious minds in a productive way?
Yeah, so one of the ones that is surprising to a lot of people is to actually have your kids, and this works for adults as well, but to actually have them gargle liquid, which is, I know, not what you would expect. So there is something in our bodies called the vagus nerve, and it runs from the brain all the way down into the gut, into the stomach, and information goes up and down from there. So if your kid says, "Oh, I've got a sore tummy," or "I've got a tummy ache, I don't want to go to school," most parents will go, oh, one of those times they're probably a bit nervous about something. And that's an example of that interaction between the gut and the brain. And so if we can help kick that vagus nerve into gear and stimulate it, it helps push our kids or ourselves into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is that rest and digest style. And so to do that, if we gargle water or gargle anything really, it helps stimulate that vagus nerve, which then in turn kicks off the parasympathetic nervous system, which then brings that wash of calm through our bodies. And so if you want to make it a little bit extra fun for kids, you could do it together. You could gargle a song together. So maybe the ABC song, Happy Birthday, whatever it is, both put the water in your mouth and gargle away, and it will help you too. And so when we can get out of that fear-based state, that allows us to reach in and pick up our strengths and the gifts that we have to give to our friendships, to our school, to our homework, to our family. And so that's one way that you can give it a go straight away.
So if I have somebody very close to me who's in high school and just needs to finish one project to graduate and seems to be procrastinating for whatever reason, I could suggest that person, before they sit down to finish up the project, just gargle, and maybe that might kick in something that will get her over the hump.
Yeah, it's wild, right? Singing does a similar thing as well. So singing along to a song can do it. With that specific scenario in feeling like a procrastinator, we know that there is a big link between perfectionism and procrastination. And so a lot of people say, oh, I'm just leaving my assignment to the last minute because I get an endorphin rush then, or I don't want to do it yet, or they give all these excuses. But most of the time it is linked to this feeling of, if I leave something to the last moment and I get an average result, it doesn't mean that I'm an average person. It means that I left it to the last minute. It was a time constraint. Whereas if we do something early and then we get an average result, so many kids and adults personalize that, and they feel like, oh my goodness, I got a C or I got a D. I'm a C or I'm a D. When actually, if we take out that sting and that tightness that comes from perfectionism, and we say, actually, we are not our work, that is something that we've created and that's separate from us, it allows people to actually start it earlier. So with a teenager, I would recommend saying, I know you've left this to the last minute, and that's probably a little bit nerve-wracking. Let's say that we just forgive ourselves for everything that we've left to the last minute up until now, and it's 9 a.m. now. Okay, let's see everything that you can do before midday, and that's it. Whatever you get done by midday, that's the end of the assignment. And when we give a time-based constraint, it helps take the pressure off, because you just get done whatever you get done in that time, and it sends that message that completed, that done is better than perfect, and a reminder that they are not their results.
I think I may be sharing part of this interview with someone special to me before it goes out to the rest of the world. Who knows?
Very good.
Hey, the gargling exercise, that seems like a lot of fun. Is there another one that you can share with us?
Yeah, so another one that I really love, and it works for kids any age, is to do a yoga pose called Ragdoll. And so if they feel like they've got too many thoughts all swimming around in their mind, it's just busy, almost a circus upstairs. What you do is you stand up with your kid, any age, could be a teenager as well, get them to stand up, and then they bend over, hinging at the hips like they're going to touch their toes. And then they grab their elbows and dangle like a rag doll. And if you do that for about 20 seconds, get them and prompt them to visualize all of that clutter that is in their mind falling out through the top of their head. It feels fantastic. After your 20 seconds, gently stand up. You don't want to get a head rush. Gently stand back up. And often it's a quick mood shifter, and it's a pattern interrupter, as well as the beautiful benefits that we get from it being a yoga-based technique. So if they're worried and all of a sudden you're upside down, it interrupts all of those worry thoughts at the same time. So that's a great one that you can do any ages. And if you're a parent, caregiver, teacher, do it with them. Mm-hmm. You know, make it fun, make it interactive. The two of you, hey, here's something we're going to do together.
Yeah. You know, isn't it interesting that we've sort of forgotten the benefit of taking a break? There are so many people who just are like, they have this project, whether they're kids or adults, and it's like, got to do this, I have to do this, and they're staring at the paper, and absolutely nothing is getting done, and they're miserable, and nothing. And if they took a 20-second break, a 30-second break, a walk around the block, and came back to it, it'd be a new world. It's a game changer.
Oh, big time. And, you know, there is a reason why the most common techniques around soothing anxiety and worry is breathing techniques, because essentially when we are oxygenating the brain, it helps send that wash of calm through our body. And that's exactly what getting up from the school desk or from your work desk as a parent or taking a walk around the block, that's exactly what that does. It pauses where we're at. We get a flush of oxygen going into the brain, and we just see the world with new eyes. It's so simple and so easy.
Yeah. So many things that I guess we should be teaching our kids now before they get to that panic, that crisis moment. If we could give our kids some just really fun activities, or maybe just, we talk about the benefits of reading with our kids. There'd be so many benefits of doing 5-10 minutes of yoga with our kids. So regularly ragdolling and gargling and singing with our kids. And also at the same time helping them understand that these are tools, these are exercises that you can use when you're feeling this way or that way, or anxious or worried, or feeling like need to be a perfectionist.
Oh, absolutely. And the benefit of this book is that it checks off your box as well. You're reading with them and you're doing the activities. So it's interactive, and kids are following the arrows, which feels fun. It feels like a choose your own adventure, interactive kind of style. And, when we model these positive, mentally healthy behaviors for our kids, it sets them up to feel safe to experience their emotions in real life, in real time. And helping them to feel their feelings is one of the greatest gifts that we can give them, because if they don't feel their feelings, they end up getting bottled up and they burst out at the least good time that you want that to happen. And so helping them to do that, doing your best to model it, and being okay with making errors, making mistakes, and recovering as best as you can in front of them is so powerful.
Yeah. I love this. I think it's one that there's a lot of things in the world that should be no-brainers, but it seems like we've forgotten them. And I don't know. I don't know if it's because we have access to all this information that we just forget the simple things that maybe our ancestors, our forefathers kind of knew instinctually.
Oh, yeah. Having quality time to sit with your kids, to listen when they say things, to read books with them, to play is so vital for general well-being, general happiness, and with the topic of the day in busting that stress and creating a pause on the worry thoughts that may be circulating through their mind as well.
Yeah, so very important. Tammy, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Why Do I Feel So Worried? Follow the Arrows from Anxiety to Calm, a guide for kids and parents, and also find out more about you.
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram at Tammy Kirkness, so Tammi Kirkness. They can find me there, and also you can get that beautiful book that I'm so proud of in all of your amazing booksellers. You can find it on Amazon, but my very favorite is to support your local bookshop. And if you have access to one of those, get on in there or go to bookshop.com.
Yeah. It's amazing. You can give your bookshop a call and say, hey, do you have Why Do I Feel So Worried? And if they say no, then just ask them politely and they'll order it and it'll be there in a couple of days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We've had a really wonderful time. I can't wait to do the gargling thing. I'm going to do that with my beautiful wife tonight. I've had a great time speaking to the author of Why Do I Feel So Worried? Follow the Arrows from Anxiety to Calm, a guide for kids and parents. And our guest has been the author, Tammi Kirkness. Hey, Tammy, thanks so much for spending time with us.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Leslie Gang. She'll be here to celebrate, but Family is Forever, a wonderful new picture book. She's also going to be celebrating Hindi's libraries. It's a really fascinating conversation about love and determination and generosity. And of the generosity of one very special woman. You don't want to miss this episode. It's wonderful. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, you absolutely want to visit readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to find out how we can help you celebrate your wonderful children's book and tell the world all about it. Being a guest on the Reading with Your Kids podcast, it's fun, it's easy, it gives you the chance in a long-form conversation to tell folks about your book, about your brand, about your inspiration. And check it out. It doesn't cost a thing. You can find out more by going to readingwithyourkids.com and clicking on Authors Click Here. That button will also let you know how you can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel. If they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read. And with that status comes a number of really powerful tools that can really let the world know that your book is worthy of being added to their family library. Oh, and you can also find out about our fantastic promotional packages. We can celebrate your book with commercials on the podcast, with messages to our 77,000 social media followers, and display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. Learn all about it by going to readingwithyourkids.com, clicking on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Tammi Kirkness. Please be sure to check out Why Do I Feel So Worried? Follow the Arrows from Anxiety to Calm, a guide for kids and parents. Also want to thank our sponsor, Stephen Joseph. His great new fun picture book, Snoodles, Cadoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles. It would be a lot of fun. We know it's a lot of fun. You and your kids are going to love it. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Brady, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.